And I'm delighted to have Dr. Sebastian Gorka back with us. Dr. Gorka, thanks so much for your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Peter.
Not at all. It's strange times we are in, and obviously people can follow you on your Twitter handle. With strange times in an inch or two difference, and we'd be having a very different conversation. And I saw one of your recent tweets, I think today, and it was 48 hours ago they tried to assassinate him. Then he played some golf and got on his jetliner. Then he ordered the fake president to give RFJ Jr. a protection. There is no leader alive like this man. We do not deserve him, but God has a plan for President Trump and us. And just in that tweet, there's so much to unpack. But can I ask you yourself, how did you see the events on Saturday evening unfold? What was going through your mind as you watched it?
Well, I was on a holiday with my daughter and my wife, and driving to a restaurant, and then she says, President Trump's been shot. And it's like one of those moments where you realize you're living in history. And I have the best producer in radio in the world, a guy with amazing political instincts. And he immediately texted me one word. He wrote the word unbelievable. And it kind of shocked me because Jeff has got like preternatural political instincts. And I had to correct him, and I said, no, absolutely, utterly predictable. And that's why I wrote a piece that went viral on Breitbart on Sunday, titled The Assassin That Had to Happen. And I mean it. This isn't hyperbolic. This is the result of 9 years of libel and calumny against my former boss, which has risen to a level where quote-unquote mainstream outlets are literally publishing magazine covers with him depicted as Hitler, and where leading Democrats are saying, if the American people re-elect President Trump, democracy ends. 5 days before the assassination attempt, the current incumbent, Joe Biden, in a speech to donors, said we need to put a bullseye on President Trump's back. So if anybody is surprised that they tried to murder my former boss, then they're a clinical moron or have been asleep for the last 9 years. There's one political grouping in America, and it's not us, it's not the conservatives, which has normalized violence, and it's the Democrats, all the way up to the White House. That's why the blood of that fire chief who shielded his daughter and his wife with his body, why the blood of that man and the blood of the two critically wounded Trump supporters is on the hands of the Biden administration and the Democrats, and especially the mainstream media.
Because you watch MSNBC or CNN or read the media, and you see the vitriol and hatred, and from our point of view, maybe on the right, it's frustration and anger at what is happening in the system, and sadness at what is happening in the destruction of institutions. But it's not hate at all towards Biden or towards anyone there. It's frustration and sadness. And it's confusing why you get such a level of hatred on one side, but not the other. And yet the blame game is always on the right.
Well, it's very simple. As I've said maybe 1,000 times on my radio show, our fuel, conservatives, our fuel is love. Love of country, love of family, love of God. The fuel of the left, and this is not, an opinion, it's just a fact. The fuel is hatred, mostly a hatred of projection. These individuals hate themselves. They're godless and they hate themselves. Therefore, how do they deal? Well, in a classic Freudian projection, they project that hatred onto others, whether it's somebody wearing a red MAGA hat, whether it's a 73-year-old grandmother praying inside a Planned Parenthood abortion clinic who was recently given a custodial sentence by the Biden Department of Justice, or whether it's the president who, just look at the imagery, just take a snapshot of Biden outside probably the most famous historic building in America, Independence Hall in Philadelphia, where America was born. And he gives this speech. It's like out of the Argentinian junta. He's bathed in, demonic red light, flanked by Marines in their dress uniforms. And then he says that half of the nation are a threat, are quote unquote MAGA extremists. This is the president who in an inauguration said, "I am the great unifier." He just called 70 million Americans fascists and a threat. So, of course, this 20-year-old grabbed a gun and tried to murder President Trump.
And it's one of those things that we all know where we were on 9/11. If I was older than 4, I'd probably remember where I was when the attempt on Ronald Reagan in 81. But you go, you've obviously been to many, many of these events. I've had the privilege of being at 3 Trump rallies, and you go through the metal detectors, everyone is searched. And this was an outdoor event, which is maybe different, but it did seem as though the Secret Service, the police, the FBI ignored the calls of attendees that there was someone with a gun. And even the BBC have reported that. And it's a curious look at events whenever those there to protect refuse to listen to someone pointing out there is a threat.
Yeah, so, if I have a detestation of conspiracy theories because they kill the mind. They're the negation of critical thought, and there's a reason they're called theories and not conspiracy facts. I have a friend of mine who's very close friends with the sniper on the roof who's in that video. And he said they don't even have his name right. And they're saying that he's posting on 4chan. I mean, are they smoking Hunter Biden's crack pipe? I mean, just the garbage in the last 72, the literal manufactured garbage that's been peddled out. I mean, I'm not going to use his name, but somebody I know sent me a YouTube video literally an hour ago about how the Ukrainian government sent the hit team to kill President Trump, but it wasn't a good marksman. And I said to the guy, never send me stuff like this again. Okay, we know who the left are. You're actually hurting conservatives by peddling crap. Just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's real. My take, and you can read the Breitbart piece or a viral video I did, I think, on Sunday morning that encapsulated my analysis after 30 years of working in national security. This was an utter tectonic catastrophe for the Secret Service, and not because of any dire plot, but because of what the Secret Service have become. It's quite ironic, and truly historically ironic, that this image of President Trump, standing erect, head held high, fist raised to say, "Guys, I'm okay." That photograph should physically never have been possible. In the British context, we call PSDs, personal security details, bullet catchers, which means you actually use your body to catch the bullets. As soon as there is a threat, you cannot see the principal. The principal must be bent double, controlled by his belt, and surrounded by a wall of flesh of agents who make it impossible for follow-up shots or a second shooter to engage. The fact that corpulent 5-foot women were on his PSD, who literally were a head and a half below him in height. I'm 6'3". The president is almost as tall as me. You've got to have guys for 6'5" on his detail, as you did, interestingly, yesterday night in Milwaukee, when President Trump came out of the RNC. Yeah. There wasn't one short, fat woman in his detail. And how did we get here? Because of DEI, because of the diversity hire. The director of the Secret Service is in hiding, has been in hiding since Saturday. There's a video I used on my show where she says, "We want 40% of the Secret Service to be women, and our priority is diversity." Not protecting the president. Our mission is diversity. Go back and play the video. I played it on my show yesterday of the assassination attempt against President Reagan by Jonathan Hinckley. Man, oh man. So, all of his detail are like hard mothers. I mean, you look at these guys and they're just big, fit guys. As soon as the shots ring out, one of them, I still don't know whether his jacket is akin to the TARDIS, but under a sports coat, he pulls out a fully automatic Uzi and he has it ready to roll within about 10 seconds. Also, really interesting, as soon as the shots ring out, you can't even see Reagan. You physically can't see him because he's shielded and instantly, like a bag of potatoes, launched into the back of the parade vehicle. They didn't call it the Beast back then. And he's speeding off to the hospital. You can't see him because he's gone. These guys kept President Trump in the kill box for more than 60 seconds, screaming, "What do we do?" You listen to the female agent. "What do we do? What do we do? Where do we go?" And lastly, there's one agent who was wounded, who does this incredible thing as the limo's literally burning rubber. He does this starfish jump to make himself as large as possible to literally catch the bullets with his own torso. The Secret Service is what you get when diversity, equity, and inclusion becomes your mantra. And now, I just saw in the Wall Street Journal this inexcusable, truly disgusting. Now the Secret Service is trying to blame local law enforcement in this sleepy Pennsylvania town. I'm sorry, the butler constable is not responsible for the security of the president. There's only one agency in the world responsible for the security of a former president or a current president, and it's called the U.S. Secret Service.
I've seen the Reagan video, and you're right. Within 2 seconds, he's surrounded with 10, 12 people. Yeah. You can't see him, full protection. And obviously last night at the RNC, you saw that they brought their A team, and it shows they have the people there. They just couldn't be arsed using them.
Well, actually, there's something very interesting. My buddy Dan Bongino, who has an incredibly popular radio show here in the US, he spent 14 years with the Secret Service after being a police officer in the NYPD. He blew this story yesterday from his connections because he's got buddies who are still in the service who said more than half of the post standers, so the guys who are physically standing and watching, more than half of them in Butler weren't Secret Service agents. They were other Treasury agents, people who may be flying a desk, people who may be, who knows what, the guy who investigates forgeries, which is also a mission for the Secret Service. More than half of the people weren't actually trained PSD, personal security detail professionals. Add to that the report that for weeks now, Jill Biden's Secret Service detail has been plussed up, probably with the A-team guys who aren't, fat little women. And it tells you this is Biden's America. This is where we are today. This is a result of the ideological penetration of what is meant to be the most premier law enforcement entity in the world.
Because obviously the Secret Service, they're a government agency in effect, and obviously they refused for Robert Kennedy Jr. to have his protection team.
Until yesterday.
When
Donald Trump told Biden, "You will give RFK Secret Service so he isn't murdered like his father or his uncle JFK." Oh, and Joe Biden is now taking orders from. I don't know if we need the election because it's clear President Trump is already the president because he's telling Joe Biden what to do.
It is lovely. Just getting in there early. But it's so you think it's more incompetence as opposed to.
Look, it's incompetence and ideology, right?
Yeah.
You've got to understand. So there's another thing that everybody's missing. Who does the Secret Service really work for? They don't work for the FBI. They don't work for the Department of Justice. After 9/11, they were parceled under the Department of Homeland Security with 14 other agencies. So who do they actually work for? They work for Alejandro Mayorkas. Alejandro Mayorkas, who single-handedly has done more to demoralize every person in uniform who works for him. Why? Because he opened the borders for Biden. If you're an officer in Customs and Border Protection, after literally 10 million, 20 million illegals have been let into the country on the orders of your boss, you are an utterly demoralized 1811, a law enforcement officer. I'm sure that demoralization has also infected the Secret Service, which works for Mayorkas as well, especially when you see the director come in. And go to my Twitter feed, go to Seb Gorka, watch her campaign ad where she says, "My priority is diversity and we want a third of the Secret Service to be women." Why? Well, I'm 240 pounds, okay? I'm about the same size as the president. I'm like half an inch taller. If I get shot, who's going to be able to physically move me to a safe vehicle, let alone to a hospital? It's got to be somebody who's bigger and stronger than I am. There's this moment, if you listen, because he's at a podium, the mic stays hot, and he's surrounded by these guys who aren't shielding him at all. His chest is open, his torso is open, and he says, "Stop, I want to put my shoes back on, and I want to tell the world I'm still alive." Let me be very clear here. Once shots are fired, the president ceases to give orders. The Secret Service does not obey orders from the president once a threat has engaged their principal. They are in control until he is secured and under medical attention. President Trump controlled the Secret Service agents. He said, "No, stop. I'm staying here. Fight, fight, fight." Excuse me? I mean, he's like Ajax. He's like Odysseus. He's like Hector. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. A guy who at least I wore a uniform for a few years in the reserves. That guy only went to a military high school. He's never seen combat. I mean, he's 25 years older than me. I do not think I would have presence of mind at his age, after I've actually been hit in the head, to duck, to realize what's happening, duck within 1 second, and then afterwards realize, hang on a second, I'm standing in front of 40,000 people. The world is watching, hundreds of millions. I need them to know it's okay, I'm all right, and we will be fine. And it's so telling in comparison to the Las Vegas shooting at that concert. Watch the video. I have a friend of mine who's literally right behind the president in the video. Nobody ran. I mean, that's preternatural. Everybody stayed in their seats. No stampede, even from the people who are right next to the fire chief who'd had his, cranium blown out. And then literally within 20, maybe 18 seconds of the first shot being fired, what do these patriots do? They start chanting, USA, USA, USA. I mean, history.
No, complete. That attitude, whenever he wanted, no, let them know, and fight, fight, fight. Again, that concern for the people, that concern, you realize there's panic and you realize you have responsibility, and that's a leader stepping up and making sure people are calm, that there is not panic. And the first thing he thinks about the people, not that actually he's been shot, isn't really sure how bad it is. Actually, he's thinking of the public, the people, and wanting chaos not to reign. Right. That's a leader.
There is, there's something genetic there. I had the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Robert Wilkie, on my show, who worked in the Trump cabinet, who's actually served in the Air Force and in the Army as well, in 2 services. And he said, we've never seen the likes of it. I mean, truly, think of any politician like that. Think of anybody, because he knows he's been hit, but he has no idea. I mean, look at Reagan. They thought Reagan had a cut. They didn't realize the bullet had gone in under his armpit and traversed across his thorax and was within an inch of his heart. Nobody knew that, right? So you don't know how badly you're hit. He's bleeding. And he takes control. That's the definition of an Ajax. That is the definition of a warrior. And a warrior who's not just instinctual in his valor, but who also knows the world is watching this live. What happens in the next 10 seconds can have ramifications that ripple through history. And if people panic, if our enemies get the wrong idea, if the left gets the wrong idea, who knows what's going to happen? So he says, it's okay, guys. Fight, 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 USA. We could talk about this for hours, but it's truly, it's remarkable.
It is, and most people would fold and panic. You need a leader who knows what to do under pressure, and that is pressure. Assassination attempt, and of course it changes. I mean, it's been an utter change that we've seen. Trump was ahead in all the swing states. You got Sleepy Joe. You've got the Democrats thinking who they can put up actually to beat this Goliath, because we're actually losing. We've no one to put up against him. And within minutes, you've got Elon Musk tweets out and says 100% support behind Trump. I've seen many individuals, comedians, musicians, black, white, different backgrounds, saying, well, actually, I wasn't going to vote for Trump. Now this man has my vote. There's something has changed. I think in the last few days, we've witnessed something remarkable in political history and history.
We have seen something that we will not know the full ramifications for even after November the 5th. I don't want to do predictions. I don't want to tempt fate, but this is a seminal moment in history. Just the reaction at the RNC. Let's leave it there because I don't want to do any more predictions.
No, and I am watching. I didn't get to watch all 5 hours of it, but I flicked back and forward on Newsmax and different speakers, and then President Trump coming out, and you could feel the hair standing up on your neck. Obviously, the support he has didn't speak. But there's so many parts. I mean, Tim Scott speaking.
Yes.
And I know you tweeted all that. And it is beautiful. What does he, I said, if you don't believe in miracles before Saturday, you better be believing them right now. Because on Saturday, the devil came to Pennsylvania holding a rifle. But the American lion got back up on his feet and he roared. And you could feel the audience just utter erupt cheers. I love it. It's exciting because it's not just one man, President Trump. There are actually many others who are actually carrying that message of America first.
Well, courage is contagious, and it is the virtue that makes all other virtues possible. So how we react to this is essential. I said, put your red MAGA hat on. My associate editor, I go into the studio yesterday, and he's inside the building. He's inside our studio, and he's wearing his red MAGA hat that I bought him in Trump Tower. And I thought, Eric, cool, you're a dude. This is how you save nations. This is how you conquer evil. I mean, God bless Tim Scott. I've said it many, many times with regards to the election in 2015. 2016. That was divine intervention. I mean, let's be clear. That candidacy was lock, stock, and barrel Hillary's. The New York Times, a month before the election, said she has a 93% chance of winning. On the night of the election, Huffington Post said she has a 96% chance of winning. And Donald Trump, I saved the tweet, it's delicious. Donald Trump has a 2% chance of winning. That was on the night of the election. Wow. And if you just look at the numbers, we spent in 2016 $700 million on the election. That we know of, because who knows the legal stuff. Hillary Clinton outspent us by a factor of 100%. She spent $1.4 billion that we know of on that election. She had all the mainstream media in her back pocket. She's the former president's wife. But who wins? The guy who's never run for anything, let alone, president of the United States. Nobody wins the first time they run for president. Reagan couldn't do that. This guy says, I'm running, and then he beats the most powerful political dynasty in America. That's God. That's divine intervention. And then if you look at the breakdown of the video from Butler, he goes off prompter and mentions this. It's actually an image, a graph he showed me. He had a printout. I was super excited when I was last at Mar-a-Lago about the economy and what happened under Biden. And this thing comes up in his mind, and he talks about, I think they had a Jumbotron, and he talks about this image that he wants to discuss later. And he just moves his head literally an inch. And then a bullet traveling at 3,000 feet per second rips off the top of his ear. If he hadn't, the doctor told him if he hadn't moved as that bullet was flying towards his cranium, we would have seen the murder of President Trump live on television. And that's, Tim Scott is right. It's a murder thing.
It is. And in America, we've completely, I think, abandoned Christianity in the UK and Europe. And in America, you've still got that huge connection. You've still got many people still hold on to the absolute ideals in the Bible, and that came out in a number of the speakers. But it does, because there were commentators that said, America's time is gone. But you see that, and the only way you can describe it is God's hand was on President Trump.
And look at this is the man, and the left excoriated for him for this. Who he actually didn't have secret. I mean, he had snipers at a distance because, okay, we're not insane, but he had no close protection with him. Who crossed Lafayette Square the day after the Antifa and BLM tried to burn down St. John Episcopal, the presidential church where every president from Lincoln Lincoln knelt in that church and prayed before his inauguration. That's why it's the presidential church. And the America haters tried to burn it to the ground. And the day after, like a boss, like something out of Greek mythology, he walks across Lafayette Square. He just gets to the church and then holds up a Bible. It takes me back. Look, it's not because I was involved in it, but Steve and I helped shape what I consider to be the greatest speech President Trump has yet to give. And it's his Warsaw speech. And if you haven't watched it, go to YouTube and watch President Trump's Warsaw speech. The Polish government wanted to have him speak downtown. Warsaw downtown is super ugly. It's bombed out and then rebuilt in Soviet style. And the president said, no. We told the Polish government we want to give this speech at this massive bronze statue of the Warsaw Uprising, when the freedom fighters came out of the sewers to fight the Nazis in occupied Poland. It took some doing, and finally the Poles agreed, and we moved the whole site to the statue. There's a line in that speech written by two incredible speechwriters who still work for the president. And it's the most important thing President Trump has ever said. I mean, outside of, destroying Roe v. Wade, this is the most important sentence he ever said. He said, and I'm paraphrasing from memory, the only question of our time is whether or not we in the West have the courage to defend our civilization from those who wish to destroy it.
I will.
Is there anything more that needs to be said? From ISIS to DEI to the next-gen Marxists? It's the only question. Do we have the backbone, the courage to defend the greatest civilization humankind has ever known from those who are actively attacking it from the outside and those who are subverting it from the inside? And, that's why that fist is so powerful.
Well, I've just Googled it and I'll be watching that speech later. 6th of July, 2017. I just see it. 35 minutes. I will watch that later, as I encourage our audience.
Tell me what you think. Text me afterwards.
I will. The RNC, let me ask you about the RNC, because President Trump will be in for one term, and then the baton passes over. And last night he selected JD Vance as his VP, put it on Truth Social, as only Trump can do, and then announces it. So the word ripples out. What were your thoughts? Why is he a good choice as VP?
A couple of obvious reasons. Number one, demographics. He's a young man, a former Marine, so he appeals to a different demographic from if you picked an older establishment politician. He's only been in Congress in the Senate for a couple of years, so nobody can tar him with the brush of being an establishment Republican. And then secondly, I think I haven't discussed this with the president. The political long-term reason I suspect which is the most important, is we need someone who credibly can take on the mantle of America First in 28. We need somebody who's proven themselves as MAGA, as America First, and he is the most America First senator in the upper house. And beyond that, his credibility is pretty. I mean, I've done British radio last night. I just did Saudi TV a few moments ago, and they're going, oh, but he called President Trump Hitler 8 years ago or whatever, and going, okay, I guess you've never changed your mind about anything because you're perfect. This guy, I was in the White House when Steve Bannon I hate autobiographies. I can't stand them. I don't have the patience for them. And Steve said, you got to read this book. Okay. I went away for Thanksgiving weekend and I literally couldn't put it down. I read the whole book, which is his book, Hillbilly Elegy, which is the best explication, literally the best explication of why working class Americans, mostly Democrats, voted for the billionaire from New York, how they realized both parties, Republican and Democrat, had betrayed them, had outsourced their jobs, allowed fentanyl into the country, and just betrayed them. And he was an anti-Trumper then. He hated Trump. And to see that man go through a road to Canossa conversion, a Damascene conversion to where he is today, I think speaks to who he is and, the substance of the man. So, inheriting the mantle, demographics, and credibility.
And I watched a speech, a great speech. Obviously, he's been 2 years in the Senate, understands how the Senate works in that short time, and he's made a name for himself. And as someone you want, someone who is younger, someone who's ideologically aligned, America First, understands the political system, but not so much you become part of it. And it does seem to tick a lot of those boxes.
He does. Think about it. He's only been in the Senate for a couple of years. That's a credit to him that somebody who's only been in politics for a couple of years has now been nominated to the second highest position in the world. And we don't want another politician.
Yeah.
And it's not I remember. I've had him on the show several times after this catastrophic train accident in Ohio. He's a senator, right? And on his phone, he goes to this creek in the forest, and he's got a stick. This is just literally 300 yards from the accident that wasn't responded to by Biden's transport secretary Buttigieg for months. And he pushes this stick into the creek, and suddenly this slimy rainbow-colored oil slick erupts to the surface because of everything that's leached into the soil already and the water table because of the train derailment. What senator does that? What senator goes to the site of an accident, gets grubby, and then investigates it firsthand? Let's have a committee to investigate it 3 years from now or something. That's the standard response. So, he's a former Marine and he lives in the real world.
Can I just final thing, the conference that's running this week, and you see the response to the media from Saturday, Sunday morning, Sky News were saying that basically Trump deserved it and he's made this environment. So go back to their usual attacking. Of course, Steve Bannon is serving 4 months in jail, but it's going to be one of the key things, I think, of the RNC conference is going to be Peter Navarro coming to speak. So he's released from jail and it comes... And that's going to be an interesting moment because, again, whatever the left have tried to do to attack and demonize and destroy not only President Trump, but all those around him, it seems to bounce off. And you're going against people who are so strong-willed and strong-believed that they will push through. And I'm looking forward to Peter Navarro walking out of prison in Miami and then walking into that conference center. Yeah,
it'll be the ultimate empirical demonstration that we live in a police state. Just a second on Peter's story. Peter was my colleague in the White House, a tough as nails guy. I used to get in about 7:15 to the West Wing. He'd be returning from his morning run to the West Wing and said, like, okay, Pete, I get it. Okay. And why did he go to prison? So the January 6th committee was illegal. Let me be explicit here. Just like Judge Cannon correctly determined that special counsel Jack Smith is not a special counsel, he was illegally and unconstitutionally appointed, as was Nancy Pelosi's committee. You cannot have a temporary investigatory. Let me just 2 seconds on nerding. You cannot have a temporary investigatory committee of Congress unless it has nominees from both parties. Okay, so you can't have a one-sided investigation. And secondly, its subject of investigation must be tied to concrete legislation. You can't just on a whim say, I don't like this issue, blah, blah, blah. It's got to be tied to concrete draft legislation. The January 6th committee had neither. Jim Jordan's nominees were ignored. Nancy Pelosi chose fake Republican Trump haters like Kinzinger and Liz Cheney because they were pliable. And there was no legislation that was relevant to the meeting of the committee. So it was illegal. So when Peter Navarro is subpoenaed to appear before it, he says, "You're illegal. I'm not going to appear. You're not a real committee." And also President Trump has asserted executive privilege over my discussions with him. I mean, this is why we have separation of powers. You can't have, the president's work be completely undermined just because Congress doesn't like him. So he said executive privilege, illegal committee. So the first time ever, what happens? The FBI is deployed. Now, this is a white-collar misdemeanor contempt of Congress charge, which usually, at worst, should be handled thusly. Peter lives a block from the FBI in downtown DC. FBI special agent or, lawyer from the general counsel's office calls up Peter's attorney and says, "We need to talk to your client. Could he come into the office next week?" Right? And then Peter and his attorney come in and there's a deposition. Instead, the FBI, the same FBI that raided President Trump's home at gunpoint, surveilled Peter, followed him to Reagan National Airport, waited till he was on a flight, and then arrested him. Not only put him in handcuffs, but put him in leg shackles, like he's on a chain gang in Tennessee. So he had to shuffle through the airport like some kind of rapist, took him to the FBI, where they put him in Hinckley's cell. And they told him, "Hey, this is where we put the guy who tried to kill your hero, Ronald Reagan. This is where we put him in holding." And here's the kicker. Then they strip searched him. A white-collar misdemeanor contempt of Congress charge, and you're shackling him and strip searching him like he's some head of a Colombian cartel. That's when you realize, and it's, this has taken me months to get over. That's when even someone like me, whose father was arrested, tortured, and imprisoned by communist secret police, that's when even someone like me says it's not a potential police state. We have arrived. So his victorious return into the public eye, that should be a pay-per-view event.
Well, Dr. Gorka, always appreciate you coming on and giving your thoughts. And I think to take a Bible verse, what the enemy meant for evil, God has turned for good. And I think what was meant to be extremely negative for not only the US, but the world, actually, it will turn out to be something very different. So appreciate your time. And of course, Salem Radio, 3 to 6 Eastern time, is it?
Salem Radio across the nation, 3 to 6 Eastern, but you can watch it on Rumble, get it on, iTunes podcast or whatever. But check out the website, sebgorka.com. And I'm on all the social media except the fascists at YouTube. So, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Parler, Getter. Just look for Seb Gorka. And of course, my latest article on the assassination attempt is at Breitbart.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Peter.